Greetings, fellow cultists, and welcome to my guide on completing Operation Frost, the most recent War Thunder event, with some pretty decent prizes. So before we start, I'm going to admit that this guide is more of a tips and tricks video as opposed to just me straight up telling you, do this to succeed, because there isn't really a set way that I think you should complete this event. It's down to you as an individual. Now, there are certain vehicles that will make this event easier, for sure, but again, it depends more on what you prefer to play. Like, if you prefer a certain vehicle over another, even if one vehicle maybe is the best tank, let's say, to take out for this event, because some person told you that online. Whatever you prefer to play is my recommendation to use for this event, because you don't want to burn yourself out. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm just going to share how I've done these events in the past, as well as a couple other tips and tricks that hopefully will help you to complete these tasks easier and get yourself some pretty decent free premium vehicles that you can use to help yourself going into 2020. So now the first step to completing any War Thunder event is to decide what it is you're going for in the first place. Personally, I go after everything I can because I'm a collector, so I'm grinding both the air and tank tasks, but not the naval ones because I really don't care that much about the ships. So if you're looking for tips specifically on naval, you might have to go somewhere else, but I'm sure that some of the methods I used will translate into naval as well, because they're pretty general tips. Once you've decided on what you want to grind, you can start to see how many stars you'll need to achieve the goals. That just means how many tasks. They call them stars, which I'm sure you already knew if you knew about the event. But once you decide how many stars, let's say you're grinding for the top task for one of the vehicles. That needs 11 stars. Now, it can be very easy to become overwhelmed during these events because even though the requirements to complete the tasks are relatively easy, especially in this event, they're relatively simple, anyone can do them for sure, it can still be very, very overwhelming because, like I'm sure a lot of people are thinking, oh man, 22 days, that's so much time that I need to dedicate into playing War Thunder. And to an extent it is. It's a lot of time that you do need to dedicate to try to complete these tasks. But you can't expect to not work for something and get it for free. But that doesn't mean that you need to be overwhelmed, because it's a lot simpler if you lay out what you want, figure out what you need to get to achieve that goal, and then work towards it step by step, rather than just looking at what you need to complete and thinking, oh, I'll never get there, I'm not going to bother, I'm not going to grind the event to begin with. Don't do that. I highly recommend grinding these events. This is your best chance to get some of the strongest vehicles that they give out. Just look at the VFW and other tanks like it. They're some of the strongest vehicles in the game. These events give very, very strong tanks. Sometimes even borderline overpowered vehicles. Commonly borderline overpowered vehicles, let's be honest. So just giving up before you even start can mean that you're missing out on a very, very, very good investment. So now the next step is obviously going to be actual gameplay, or you can call it the grind if you prefer. For this stage, what type of vehicles you're going for significantly impacts how you need to play to get those rewards. For example, I'm grinding the tasks for the tanks and aircraft, as I said earlier. This means that I can play the ground battles and complete both tasks, because if I'm in an airplane and I get kills on tanks or on other aircraft, that counts for my air tasks. Getting a ground kill in a plane will not count for your ground tasks, so don't do that. And vice versa. Obviously, if I'm in a ground vehicle playing in a ground match, I'm completing that task. So you can actually do both at the same time in combined battles. So if you want to get both the tasks like I do, you can play ground battles and complete both tasks simultaneously. However, if you're not trying to do the tank tasks, you're only trying to do air, or maybe you're doing air and naval, you might be better off playing air battles unless you do decently in CAS and can get into planes consistently in ground battles, because then maybe it would still be worth playing tanks and just getting enough to get into a plane and then using that plane. That would be up to you if you think that that's going to speed you along as opposed to just playing air battles. It might, but again, it's entirely up to your skill as a player. For me, the way I usually like to grind these tasks is like this. First, I start by trying to complete the kill tasks, because to me, those are the easiest ones that you can do. The 4 kills, oh no, it used to be 4, okay. The 6 kills in RB in one game and 28 total kills are to me the simplest thing that you can grind to start with, and because I focus on tanks primarily, I put my primary objective on getting into tanks, getting those kills first, and then I focus on getting the aircraft ones secondarily. So I'll get into a plane, most matches try to get some kills maybe, but I focus first on getting the tank. I don't try to rush, get into a plane and then do that, because I just feel like it's more efficient to take the tank first, get those kills, and then focus on the plane task secondarily rather. Now, on a side note, I highly recommend playing either RB or Sim, and the numbers that I just gave are for RB, because if you play these in arcade and try to complete the tasks, you're having to get a lot more kills, which to me translates to more time. Now for you, maybe you're not good in RB, or maybe you're not good in Sim, so it makes more sense for you to play arcade. But if you're decently skilled in RB, or you're even a good player in arcade, I recommend maybe just try RB for a couple matches. You might find that you're completing your tasks a lot quicker, because those multipliers make a huge difference. You're talking cutting the number of kills you have to get in half right off the bat. Like 55 kills is quite a few, but you cut that down to 28. That's really not that bad. If you can average 2 or 3 kills a match, which I feel like a lot of players can, you're not going to be playing for very long to complete these tasks. So that's just something that keep in mind, because it might be worth a shot. And the numbers for Sim are even lower, so if you're decent in RB and you've never tried Sim, maybe give Sim a shot, because I know from experience in the past, if you grind these events in Sim, you can be done like that. It's super simple, super fast, but that again depends on your skill level, so take that into account before you try to push yourself into a situation where you're actually going to be doing worse, because that's going to be worse off for you in the long run. Anyways, once I've completed the kill requirement, I take stock of where I'm at with the other tasks. So I'll get out of the battle and then I'll pull it up. I recommend going in and favoriting the task that you have to complete in the achievements. You just click the little box and have them add to your favorites so you can pull them up real quick when you get back. And once I complete those 2, I'll take a look at the other 3 and I'll say, okay, which one of these am I closest to right now? Am I closest to getting all of the caps I need? Am I closest to getting all the assists I need? Am I closest to getting all the wins I need? And for example, if I'm closest to getting the wins, maybe I adjust my playstyle accordingly to that. So I say, okay, I've got 8 or 9 wins. It should take less than 5 to get to 12 wins, because 50% win rate is, you're basically winning half the time unless you're getting really unlucky, which can happen, don't get me wrong. So maybe you say, okay, I'll just try to play and I'll try to focus as best I can on helping my team to win. That's what I'm going to do. And then you get your wins. That's personally how I've done it. And from my experience, it usually works out pretty well. And this would apply to any of the other things as well. So let's say you're closest to getting the caps. Alright, well now I'm going to adjust my playstyle. Maybe I take faster vehicles so that I can get to the caps, take those caps, and then I can try to go to the next one. I can kind of fight my way around, maybe try to go for the assists because I'm closest to that. So maybe I take out like a British tank so that I have more of a chance of critically hitting the enemy tank rather than actually killing them in one shot, because it can be relatively easy to get a lot of assists with a vehicle like that. Or maybe play something like a light tank that doesn't do a lot of damage in one hit, and just play as a supporting role with your team, go for getting assists. or just play normally and hope that you can get them. And this logic also applies to air with one difference. So if after getting the kills I need in my aircraft, I find that I'm not close to getting either the wins or the assists, I'll tend to take out a bomber into arcade and get the tonnage drop relatively quickly. You could just sort of side climb up and get above the majority of the players who are just kind of flying around at mid to low altitude farming kills, and you could just go and bomb the airfield and the bases and then the airfield. And you can, depending on the bomber you take out, you can complete that relatively quickly. It also gives you a good chance to actually grind your bomber line. I've done that for a couple nations during these events, so just something to take into consideration. But this part actually really depends on how you like to play, because maybe you just can't stand bombers, so it might just make more sense to you to keep going for the assists. The assists are relatively easy to get if you play as a plane. You just machine gun stuff on the ground and you'll farm assists like quite quickly if you're in ground battles. But again, depends on how much you really want to push yourself to try to get these done as fast as humanly possible. I do have a few more recommendations on what not to do to try to speed up this grind. I see a lot of players try to cheese the event by using fast vehicles to rush caps. Thankfully, Gaijin has actually increased the amount of caps you need, which some people might think is bad, but personally I think it's good, because in previous events it was really bad. You'd have entire teams of people spawning up in like M18s, or not so much R3s because those are more new, but R3s are pretty common right now, or any sort of fast vehicle, and they just bum rush the cap, J out, get in the plane, and then go in and try to farm kills with the planes, which if you've played during these previous events, I'm sure you noticed that. And what that actually does is you may be saying, oh man, I'm getting my task done real fast doing it like this, and maybe you are, but you're putting your team at an extreme disadvantage to the enemy, who, if maybe it's a German team at mid-tier, they don't necessarily have a ton of things that are fast that can get to the caps. They've got more than they used to, but in previous events they didn't really have as much that would be fast enough to get to the caps, so they would more just play normally to try to grind them out. And it would mean that, at least from my experience, the German teams had a much higher chance of just steamrolling the enemy team and winning, because half the enemy team was already dead or in planes. And this doesn't necessarily apply if you're using that fast vehicle to get caps but also continuing to fight the enemies afterwards. There's nothing wrong with that, but try to remember that you need to assist your team rather than being selfish to finish your task, because everyone else on your team, or a good chunk of them, is probably trying to do their tasks as well. This isn't just because you should want to help your fellow players, because I understand the feel of, oh, I'm alone in this game, because your team is just kind of off doing who knows what on the corner of the map for some reason. Believe me, I've been there. But just remember that other people are trying to complete these as well, and I've actually found that by assisting my team, it actually speeds up my grind rather than vice versa, because if you just play and support your team, you actually tend to win more battles. And this just goes for whenever you're playing. If you work with your team rather than against them, you will see that your win rate starts to climb considerably. Now, this might not be the case if you're a super skilled player and you're just lone wolf. You can go and get 15 kills relatively easily, because then it might mean that you're making a much higher impact for your team just playing like that. But if you're more of the average skill level player, then just supporting your team, taking caps, covering flanks, can make a huge impact on just how many games you actually win as opposed to lose. And wins are one of the things that help get your tasks done. So if you can get more of those done faster, it actually can help you grind even quicker than just rushing the caps, especially considering they've upped the amount of caps you need to get pretty considerably as opposed to what it used to be. Anyways, enough of me preaching to you for today. If you enjoyed the video and it helped you in any way, or you think it might help you in any way, please consider dropping a like and a comment on what you think of what I've said down below. And if this is the first video of mine you've watched, maybe consider joining the cult by clicking the sub button and joining my Discord. But that's all for me today. If you need any further assistance or you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me either in a comment, or you can message me on my Discord, or even just DM me if you want. If there's a question you have, I'm always willing to help if I can, and I will see you guys next time.